sure there's no lipstick on there. Cheers, brother. We have lots of precise language conversations. And I mean, I've gotten to some pretty big revelations from, having precise languages conversations, working through my shit with you.
Yeah.
And so I want to hear your perspective on how you use it, where it's useful, how you apply it to the different areas in your life.
We've done 3 or 4 really proper long sessions,
Right.
and they've all been about different topics, different parts of my life that I want to clear up. But the couple things that have been consistent in it that I've taken away and applied to other aspects of my life, not just the issue that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I've seen it manifest in a couple ways. One is it's told me and emphasized the importance of really thinking through your goals and your objectives in a situation and being very clear with yourself. It's it's like that old quote, I don't know who the hell said it, but it's basically like, if you don't give yourself a goal, you'll end up anywhere.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's, for the most practical purposes, it's in addition to like the transformational properties of just doing a great precise language session with you, it's also just reminded me that in my life, when I'm setting a goal for anything, I need to set a goal.
Right.
As opposed to just having this sort of vague desire of, it'd be kind of cool if
Right.
XYZ, right? Instead of living in that vagueness, it's reminded me to be really fucking clear. Not just about the outcomes I want, but also, if you dig deeper, also being clear about how that's going to make me feel should I achieve it, right? At a deeper level. What's that going to do for the attainment of the values that are important to me? The deeper cut, not just, I want to make 10 grand more this year. I want to get a raise. I want to meet more women. Right. What specifically is that going to do in terms of like shifting my internal experience of the world? So that's one, is the goal setting aspect, and just really reminding me how important it is to be clear. The second one plays out in a pretty specific part of my life. It's around sales. Actually selling. My day job, I work in an ad agency. I'm not full-time sales. I do other work, but I do help out with the sales process. I'm kind of like the subject matter expert. So the sales team will bring me in on sales pitches to help talk about the product that we're selling.
Right. More on the technical side.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you're dealing with something as technical as what I deal with, the average person, the average marketer, doesn't necessarily get the technical nuances that I do.
Yeah.
So precise language makes me really just knowing the overall structure and intent of precise language makes me kind of like step back and say, all right, how am I going to take this admittedly pretty convoluted, hairy technical concept and break it down in a way that this person sitting across the table from me, who I'm helping pitch, that they can understand and clearly connect with their business objectives and their personal objectives for this sales pitch.
Right.
Helps me to remind me to connect everything I'm saying to what it is they need. And reminding me of what I'm saying and what it's reminding me to ask myself, is what I'm saying and is what I'm selling what these people need? Right? Because that comes from a point of integrity, of only giving people what they need, and don't try to hoodwink them, don't try to be shady and sell them something they don't need, or give them advice, like from a coach's perspective, give them advice that they don't just fucking need. It's wasteful. In
sales especially, like, there are people that pull bullshit moves, right? Shady stuff. People who...
We've both been in sales. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in sales since I was 16. Yeah. So the people that pull that type of bullshit to get ahead are the people that are confused on how to interact with the human psyche. Because it's just a series of questions. It's, what does this person want? What's been standing in their way? Like, how long have they been in this loop? And how do I get them to connect? How can I show them a way, like the steps that they need to take in order to move forward, and then show them like their dream, who they will be once they have this thing, right? And so in what you're doing, and I find it interesting because you're coming from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, I deal with some pretty hairy, like at the level of computer programming code.
Right, yeah.
Like it can get pretty nasty, but that does have, if you do that stuff right, what I'm recommending, that will have downwind impacts on their revenue.
Right.
Or whatever that is they're trying to achieve at the top line of their business objectives.
In trying to explain something that's technically difficult and putting it in a way that's simple for someone to understand that attaches to their emotions, which is what sales is it's like you need to understand this complex thing. I'm going to say it in a very simple way. And the way that you know that you did it right is that they feel it, right? Or if they don't feel it, then they're not a good fit for you, whatever you're trying to sell. So
when they have this physical version of, I get it.
Right.
Like I get it. It's almost like an aha moment for them where your words connect with their objectives.
Right. And you're doing the opposite of precise language when you're actually explaining it to them. And here's what I mean by that. So first step is to speak up, speak clear, then speak precise. But as a technician, when someone who's explaining something technical is using a lot of terms that people don't know, it's too precise, it's too granular.
Interesting, yeah.
And so you have to, we talk about fractaling to get to the understanding of it. Well, that's to get to the depth of it. But to get to the point, the general point of it, you have to do the opposite, which is start generalizing more, actually using more vague terms.
It's like the resolution on the camera.
Right. People say, vague language is bad language. It's not. It's useful. Void language creates very specific boundaries. That's its value. I don't want you to put your finger in my eye. You know what I mean? Yeah. The general clear way of saying that is, please respect me. And what I mean by that is, and then you go into it. So void language has its value in setting very clear boundaries. Should always be followed up with a clear statement, though. I digress. But the generalization is the opposite of fractaling a word. And you have to be able to scope in between both. That's when you find mastery in language. And people, in general, the average person has an easier time finding general words for something. For someone who's like intellectually smart on a very technical, logical level, that's what that type of brain struggles with.
They want to go as deep as possible.
Right, exactly. And they have a hard time generalizing. They have a great time fractaling down to the point. And so whenever I'm doing a session with somebody, I kind of notice where that gift is, and to get them to see the other side, you polarize it. So then you start asking them to be clear and more general. Right. So
I want to clarify just to make sure I'm understanding you about what you're saying, because we talk precise language all the time.
Right.
And what you're saying right now is complete news to me. I felt like I know everything about precise language and then you're saying that because you've always touted how important it is to be precise. Right. And now you're saying, okay, well, there's levels. Maybe you want to move up.
The next level of vague language or precise language, learning it, or it's really the mastery of language. Because, again, everything is true from some perspectives. That's one of the universal truths, right? And so void language, by definition, has to have some value because everything has value. Yeah. So it's about finding out what that is. Now, when you first start working with someone and you're like, well, the value of a void is their monsters are going to stick to it. I'm giving you boundaries. And then the way to handle that in a precise language session is like, well, then tell me what you want. I understand. And tell me what you want. But when void and vague language has its value in conveying emotion, there is this part of wonder that we have, that we crave. It's curiosity. Mm-hmm. It's the sheath just outside of the things that we know, and we start by feeling it. Yep. We always feel first before we understand. Mm-hmm. And so to use void and vague language when you are trying to communicate an intention, an emotion, it has its value. When you're trying to unstitch a situation and get to the point, then that's when you shift into precise language.
Got it.
But when you're flirting with a woman, right, it serves you so much to be vague. Yeah. Now, when you're trying to communicate something like clear and cut through the emotion, it's good to be precise. When you're trying to stir up emotion, then it's good to be vague. And that's why when you're dealing with a monster, when you're dealing with negative emotions inside, that's why you shift into precise language, because precise language gets to the objective thing. Void language stirs up emotion without any vision. It's like closing your eyes or turning the lights off and going on a ride. Uh-huh. So because there's so much unknown associated to the feeling. So when you're feeling good and you're telling stories and you're on the same page emotionally with somebody, void and vague language is the language of poets. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you said something a moment ago. This is such an interesting conversation for me because, again, we've talked to the nth degree.
You've been to all my webinars. Yeah. You've watched all my content. We've done sessions together.
So I don't know it as well as you do, but I feel like I've got a pretty deep grasp of all the ins and outs of precise language. So this conversation we're having right now is so revealing because I understand the power, the transformational power of precise language, what it's done for me for a number of issues in my life to really clear them up and move them to a level where I can perform well. But I'm also inherently a storyteller. Mm-hmm. I'm a dreamer. I'm an artist. Like, I am a curious person. I love fantasy. And to hear you talk about there's a step in the process where precise language actually may harm the creative process. Right. Which is just because you said the first step is dreaming, is curiosity. And that operates. The language of that is some level of, all right, well, let's see what happens, of some vagueness, of wandering, right? Because that's what curiosity is. It's much just like you are just sort of ambling and walking through the world and just seeing where your emotions take you from one moment to the next moment.
It's feeling
and that
without
is
clarity.
The antithesis of precise language, because you're just precise language is direct, it's straight, it's laser focused. A computer could program it.
Right, yeah.
But curiosity, like you said, it's the language of poets and seducers and lovers and romance and seduction and like this full feeling of passion. So this is interesting because it's like you acknowledge the fact that precise language isn't for all parts of your life.
Right, exactly.
So my question for you is like, when do you know to turn it on and off?
Okay, this is something I've learned.
Because again, like dreaming because dreaming inspires you. It plants that seed of like, shit, I want more in my life.
Right.
So at what point when you're in this dreaming, curious stage, how do you know when it's time to stop dreaming and start getting to work? And then come work with you or use precise language on your own?
Oh man, it's tough. Because I've
and I suspect that this is tough because the answer rides the line between vagueness and preciseness.
That's the art. It's similar to the art of surfing. Like you are somewhere between the atmosphere and the water, and in riding the wave that line that is moving constantly, and that is the art of life, of knowing when to use it. So here's a general rule of thumb for me. Is I like to experience all emotions. I like pain. I like confusion, curiosity, heartache.
You sure do.
I sure do. Yeah. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for all the emotions. When I am just expressing myself and speaking in a flow state, and we all do it every single day. So anytime that you're just spitting out words, whenever you're thinking, you're in flow state. I allow myself to speak however I choose. When I start to, I've sensitized myself to feeling stuck, feeling like I've had this same problem 2 or 3 times now, and going in and trying to figure it out. That's when I go into precise language. So, the first solution to achieving any goal, whether it's trying to figure out a problem that you're in, like a conundrum, or like everything is going great and you set your sight on something new. Any type of like new transformation starts with self-awareness. Like you first have to find where you are on the GPS. Where am I on the map? What roads are around me? And you need to go into the mansion of your mind and turn on all the lights and see what's going on before you can make a move.
Yeah.
In that process, when I'm doing a 5 and 5 minutes of silence and 5 minutes of just continuous writing, if I'm frustrated, I don't write in precise language. I just let myself vomit.
Yeah.
And I do that. And I always say this, even in precise language.
That's the creative process.
Exactly. And
because it's anger, right? You're pissed. That's pure emotion.
Right. It might be anger. It might be motivation.
Sure.
I might be...
It's a tiger you shouldn't tame.
Exactly.
Let him out of his cage.
Maybe I'm procrastinating and something happens and now I'm suddenly motivated. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I've got some of this good energy. Sit for 5 minutes and just acknowledge the energy. Let my mind wander and do that ADD thing that it does, that everyone's mind does. And then let the emotion just pour out. Then I go through the 5 questions that, are constantly perpetuating progress. What do you want? What's standing in your way? What's your drug? What's your next step? And who do you need to be? Who are you gonna be when this happens? And once you address your feelings first, and then the logistics second, that's the way that you deal with a child.
Got it. So this is what's the first thing that's popping into my head about this is because the question I asked, just as like a reminder to everybody watching and listening, is how do you deal with, when do you know when to allow the irrational flow states of emotion? And then when do you say, all right, now we're going to shift into precise language. Right. I see this as fuel and transmission.
Right.
Okay? Like you need fuel to drive, and the inspiration that you're talking about, that you're gleaning from allowing yourself to write angrily or be ecstatic in your creativity, which is both hyper irrational states.
Right.
That is the necessary fuel you need for the creative process.
Right.
And if all you're doing is steering on an empty fucking tank, you're not going anywhere.
That's why feelings are absolutely necessary for progress. All the feelings, they're just all different types of fuel. So when you're dealing with a child and they're throwing a tantrum, okay, and they're getting emotional, what happens is their subjective reality is clouding their ability to see objective reality. So they feel so much that they can't see that it's not a big deal, or like what the solution is to whatever their problem is. And so when you're dealing with a child, you have to realize that it's feelings first, facts second. So it starts with a series of questions, letting the monster speak, letting them go off and say how they feel. And then when that's been expressed and understood that it's real, that that those feelings are legit, because again, you have to realize that from some perspective, everything's legit. Mm-hmm. Every decision, it exists, and from some perspective, you would feel that way too. Yep. Being a 2-year-old with whatever it is.
Toothache. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So when you never lose that part of the subjective reality taking over and blinding you from objective reality, it's just more active in kids because they're more imaginative, and then they get domesticated to be more logical, right, and objective. And then once you become an adult and you have a good job, you're paying your bills and all that stuff, it's time to revert back to allowing the subjective reality, the confusion, to embrace it. Like, again, when a child is sitting and crying, the reason you put them in timeout is let them experience it, because that's how they grow. And when we become adults and we become successful, we think that to get more, we have to keep on doing what we were doing, when in fact, that only gets to a certain point. After that, you have to do the opposite of what you were doing to get that.
And that's also, like, I feel like the opposite in this case would be to embrace the irrational, embrace the passionate, embrace the seductive, the manic, right? And that will necessarily, like you said, at a certain point as an adult, you've reached a level of plateau. You've reached a plateau of your finances of promotions. You've hit the top of the charts in your particular industry, whatever.
Right.
That irrationality is the first step stool. It's a springboard for innovation into like the next realm for whatever the hell it is you're dealing with, whether it's the intensity of your intimate relationships, whether it's your career trajectory, whether it's your side art projects that you work on, like that, embracing that irrationality, the vagueness, the emotion, the passion is like the first step to hitting that next level. Right.
Yeah, like feeling fulfilled. That's what comes after success.
Yeah, that's a big thing for you is like answering that question.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, buddy. You've, especially for men, but I mean it applies to anybody. Is all right. You've got your MBA.
Mm-hmm.
Got that done by 30.
Right.
Right. VP by 35. Making $250,000. Got your house paid off. You got a car. Whatever. Going 4 vacations a year. You've got all the shit that you're supposed to have and then some. And then you're still like, why am I still reading comic books and doing boring shit on Friday night, which is what I did when I was 16.
Right.
And life dries up.
Right.
I have many friends who are in this position right now. I'm 35. I have many friends. I can't tell you the number of friends I have who are at some level at this plateauing that we're talking about.
Right. And you might be doing the thing that you did when you were 16, which is comic books, or you might be doing the thing you did when you were 23, which was going out. Just like mindlessly going out, and at some point you start to think to yourself like, okay, what am I doing? Because what's the point? Because I can see the point when you're younger. You're like, I wish I had money to go out. So you're broke as hell, and now you do have money to go out. But that lasts. I've never seen that last more than like a year for a person.
Yeah.
So where they're just like,
out.
Yeah, right. And if that's where you're at in your life, I say go for it because it's fun.
It is.
But at some point. Because
and it's still fun to do it, just not all the time.
Right. And but then you find yourself sitting at home more often, and you're like, wait a minute.
Because we're both there right now.
Yeah, we're sitting at home.
Reading, writing, working on something, building something. We're old men. You can't see it, guys, but this is all gray hair right here. You inspire me to do more of that.
Right.
And that's why I'm making these sort of necessary shifts in my life to... Because you're 34, I'm 35.
Yeah.
Making these changes in my life to pull back the, I was ready to say pull back the drinking, but that's clearly not working right now. Pull back the going out, socializing,
right,
and then focus on purpose.
Yeah. And there are some people that focused on purpose. Maybe they donated most of their time and sacrificed the money. Mm-hmm. Maybe they started a family and sacrificed their dream when they were a kid. What happens is there's like one thing that you end up mastering that at some point you start resenting because it took you away from like all the being complete, and this is that kind of crisis moment where you quit your job and you
become a yoga teacher.
Exactly.
You go all fucking eat, pray, love.
Right.
Look, I'm going to Indonesia in 2 months.
Right.
Go do some mountain climbing, fucking off in the jungle. But I know I've been to Asia before. Every time I go over there, it is full of those people.
Right.
I was in
like tourist people that are
expats. I was in Thailand about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Every American I met was somebody who's like was somebody my age, maybe a little older, into their 40s, anywhere between like 28 and early 40s, who had said, "Oh yeah, I really just got some variation of I got really tired of the rat race and I wanted to discover my purpose." And I was like, "That's cool, man. Like that's that's natural. I'm glad you let yourself feel it. So what'd you do?" Well, I quit everything. I completely fucked up. I cut ties with all the people who matter in my life, and then I moved to essentially a third world banana republic country, and I'm now a yoga teacher.
Yeah, right. And here's the thing.
And it's they just go to one end or the other.
Right.
And they're either like hyper dedicated to their career, and they did that so much.
Right.
It's like you pull a string back, you pull a rubber band back. Right. At some point, that fucking thing's gonna break, and then when it breaks, that's when you become a yoga teacher in Thailand.
Right.
Or whatever.
Right.
Or broke yoga teacher.
Because here's the thing, they think that here's what happens when you polarize your life from one extreme to the next, you need a new set of tools. Okay? When you're a baby and you learn how to you basically cry to get whatever you want, then it becomes okay, and you're a completely dependent being. Then you need to learn this new tool so you can start to get along with people, because that's the next phase. Yep. The first phase for a baby is like cry when you need shit so you can stay alive, and that's the way it should be. Then you change. So now you have language. Learn how to use your words. You don't throw tantrums.
Your dog is stuck at the first phase.
Yeah, right.
Your 12-year-old dog is stuck at the first phase.
So then when you become a teenager, you have to be socially normalized, and now you need to learn a new set of tools. The thing is, adults feel like since they're taking care of themselves with basic responsibilities of independence. Again, independence. We're totally codependent on everybody. Yeah. And we think that because we won the money game or the goal, whatever the goal game was. Yeah. I'm a great parent. I'm a CEO now. I built my own company. I've traveled the world, and now you're looking for stability. Because no matter what your dream is, there's someone that's doing that, and that was their thing that they try to succeed in, and now they're looking for fulfillment as well. But the thing is, they know they need to polarize, like experience something new, but they use the old metaframe of success, of achievement, that they use to get success and try to use it in fulfillment. So what ends up happening is you have to renounce everything that you had in order to have this new thing. That's why husbands leave their wives. That's why people quit their jobs. That's why they become yoga teachers in Thailand, right? But you don't have to do that. And those who don't do that are the ones that upgrade their software, that accept the next level of puberty as adults, which is enlightenment, is what people call, ascension, whatever it is. Born again, as the Christians call it. And that starts by, you need to take the role of your own parent. You've gone from being an independent person where you take the role of personal responsibility, but now you're playing the role of a parent. Now, what does a parent do for a kid? He watches them. He's aware of their behaviors. Checks their forehead to see if they're sick. Feeds them. Makes sure and has an internal clock of like, oh, they need to rest. And watch and forgive. A kid's throwing a temper tantrum, and sometimes a parent's laughing, and it's like because the kid's saying something hilarious, but it's spiteful. But they understand it's for the best. A parent makes a kid do something hard because they know it's best for them. Yeah. A parent will sit down and talk to you rationally and be relentlessly forgiving. At least good parents. Sure. That's what parents are supposed to do. And that's why, to get to that next level of growth, it usually comes to you in some type of tragedy. It might be an identity crisis on its biggest level, or it might just be like that thing that you could never get yourself to do.
Because everything's going well. Why would you want to disrupt that party?
Exactly, right? But there's always something, and it's either little or big, but no matter what, it's that tap on the shoulder that you need to upgrade the way that you perceive the world, or else same thing every day for the next 50 years, 60 years, however long. People might be living to be 200, who knows? So that's why, again, taking personal inventory. A parent gets a child's report card. How is their brain doing? They get behavioral reports like, hey, parent-teacher conferences. Yeah. They take the kid to regular checkups, to the dentist. I mean, kids go to more regular doctor's appointments than adults do. All this stuff is being documented and watched and discussed between two people. One person's getting two people's attention, a feminine energy and a masculine energy, and they come up objectively like what you should do based on the combination of those two energies. The purpose of having a good relationship with your parents is to show you how to self-parent, self-coach yourself. And that's the role you have to take. And if you didn't have a good relationship with your parents, or a good role model, because honestly, anyone could play this role for you. Sure.
I've had a lot of people outside of my parents who have been crucial for me at a relatively young age, late teens, early 20s. In shaping the trajectory of my life, that stepped in when my parents just didn't.
Right.
Couldn't, right? Yeah.
Right.
So just as kind of like just for my own sake and for everybody else's sake, so you're talking about, the question I'd asked was about, right, how do we ride that line, and how do we know when to shift gears out of that irrational, emotional, creatively transcendent state of dreaming, right? The inspiration, which fuels us, which gives us inspiration and motivation for this next big step in our life after success.
Right.
And how do we shift from that very emotional state into something that's a little more structured and essentially utilizes like precise language.
Right.
So just what I'm hearing is a really good way of doing that is through parenting, using the metaphor of the parent. So you are using your sort of mindful consciousness to negotiate between the irrationality and frankly the funness of the child, which is to say the inspiration, the raw energy, the raw emotion, and negotiating between that and the parent, which is we are moving forward as a family. Yeah. We're moving forward together, my child, right? Right. And so you're talking about using that metaphor to essentially act as the parent. Right. The parent moves it forward.
Right. You take on these new personalities as you grow from birth. Again, when you're first born, you were completely selfish. Okay, and that's that personality that it has teeth that will bite you, that will cry, that doesn't care if it keeps you up. Then you have the next one that communicates what it wants. So it can choose to be polite. It can choose to be mean. Then there's a part of you that has to care about what everybody else thinks. Like when you're a little kid, you can communicate what you want, what you don't want, but you don't care what people think. You start hitting 13, 14, and all of a sudden, your friends' opinions are more important than your parents.
Oh, yeah.
So so now you become this social being, and you still have the selfish one, you still have the good and the bad. Now you have the social one, and now you need the independent one. Okay, can you take care of yourself? And after that, you add this next personality is like, okay, now that you're good, what are you going to do now? And there's two things that people do when they're bored: create, fuck shit up. Okay? Now, that all depends on how you're feeling.
Sometimes it's the same fucking thing.
Right. And so now you have to become aware of your emotions to make sure that you don't get bored, because negative emotion per unit packs so much more of a power than positive emotion does. So if that shit leaks in and you're bored, you are going to be self-destructive, destructive to others, or it might be in a violent way. It might be in a very, very passive way where you become just kind of a shut-in and you're not taking care of yourself. On the other hand, you might get inspired to create, but what happens is, even if that creation starts going well, because you're not parenting yourself, you handle your success of your creations the way a 15-year-old would handle having a Lamborghini or $1 million, like an asshole. So how do you parent yourself then? Take a look at the relationship of a parent and a child. Children sleep more than parents. They wake up earlier. They go to bed way earlier, and they take naps. In those moments where they are sleeping, whether it's in the middle of the day or they go to bed and the parents talk, that's when the parents get to make decisions. They get to have a conversation with themselves.
What are we going to do about Spencer?
What are we going to do about Spencer?
It's actually, and also Dalton.
Right.
Because, yeah.
Right. So.
I still say that about myself.
Right. So if the kid was up all the time.
Yeah.
With the parents and with them constantly, they would never be able to communicate and exchange that masculine and feminine perspective of what's best for this kid. And then what does the kid start doing? Ask the dad one thing, and then others go totally. Ask the
Mom
and they do that.
Gives it.
The parents have to reconcile, and they have to make objective plans for the child, and then allow them to play that. This is why, first thing in the morning, you set your goals and intentions. What are you going to do today? When a parent wakes up a child, they make sure that they brush your teeth, get this and all set, their schedule set, all of that. Then in the middle of the day, the child takes a nap. And that's a parent's opportunity to relax, kind of a halftime. Hey, how's the day going? What can we do to improve it? Are they feeling testy? Do we have to make any adjustments later in the day? And then the kid wakes up again. And then at the end of the day, parents talk, they catch up, and they make a plan for the next day. And they reconcile any bullshit that happened that day to make sure that the kid's on the right path. All this is good parenting, paying attention. And this is done by personal reflection. Yeah. This is why I write in a notebook throughout the day. Yeah. Almost every day.
Stacks of these things.
Yeah, right. Almost every day. I go into that notebook in the middle of the day, around like 1 to 2, maybe 3, where...
It's your energetic nap time.
It's my energetic nap time, right? Where I feel like I'm throwing a tantrum. And the way that an adult throws a tantrum is the feeling of ADHD. Where it's like, okay, I got to do this, 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 I got to do this. And I say, hold up, go take a nap. Parents are going to talk. My angels, right, are going to talk. I'm asking my feminine. And that's where I go into a 5-minute meditation. And I just and what I do there is I let the kid in me vomit for the first 5 minutes. Just like all the feelings, get it out. What do you need to do? Give me all your problems. And my brain goes nuts, and I got to do this, and I'm worried about that, I'm worried about that.
And that's the irrational sort of dreaming thing I'm talking about.
Right. And then I come back and ask that irrational mind the right questions. And this is why mentoring, good coaching relationships.
They're just good friends.
Yeah. Right, good friends, good parenting, it's all the same shit. That's why it can never be replaced by Google, because your solutions don't come from finding the answers. It's through asking the right questions. Yeah. And that's the thing that the internet doesn't do yet, is it doesn't ask you the questions. And so it can't be empathetic.
How do you know what you need to know?
Exactly. And by being empathetic and understanding how precise language works and these 5 questions that keep you always moving, that's what perpetuates the answers. And then when it comes to like, what are your next steps? Well, okay, I need to build a house. Okay, how do you build a house? Now you ask Google. Yeah. And there you go. do your tutorials and you're good to go. But that's why like people think that they're going to find answers to their problems by searching on Google. Well, the thing is if you're a diligent, hardworking, successful person, then if you have the right roadmap, you should be able to follow it. You're not asking the right questions, and that's something that you can only get from an empathetic being that has clarity. Mm-hmm. And whenever I'm emotional, I go and find that right empathetic being that has clarity in the area that I'm struggling, and then I state my thing, and then I receive the right questions. That's what I'm looking for, and that's how you parent yourself. Having an accountability partner, as it is, like in my Invincible training class, like everyone has an accountability partner. On top of, I hold everyone accountable too. Yeah. But if you're trying to make any type of significant transformation in your life, whether
you gotta have skin in the game.
You've got to have skin in the game, and other people's disappointment is
a great fucking motivator.
It's a huge motivator.
I tell you, I struggled with that exact point for so long in a couple different aspects. One, exactly what you just said, is having a mentor or an accountability buddy. Don't use that. That's not very cool.
No.
Yeah, but having somebody who essentially, if you fuck up, you let them down, and that sense of disappointment and shame that you feel, man, I fucked up. I let Spencer down. Like that will motivate you.
Right.
And the other one is just, it's basically that. It's letting people down, and thus yourself.
Right.
Because again, going back to what you're saying, as a teenager, like we still trust our social network, and we don't want to let people down.
Right. And even when I, in my my little mastermind group that I meet in of all my coaches, right?
Yeah.
Is we're all peers, and
you're all doing different things too. Like they're not all
life coaches. Some of them are dating coaches for men. Some are dating coaches,
photographers,
right.
CEOs.
Right.
You've got
right.
They're bringing a diversity of perspective to your situation.
Right.
Even if they're a coach, it's drastically different areas.
Right. But it's all people that are empathetic and understand how to speak clear and precise, therefore know how to find the right questions. And I always meet with a group. Now, when I have a specific problem, I'll go to a person.
Why is it that you meet with a group? I'm just curious.
There's more disappointment. There's more than one person that is holding you accountable. So it's not just a single shot of disappointment. It's a beer, a glass of wine, a shot of Jack. So it's a like you get messed up, and then maybe if it's bad enough, then they'll all have individual conversations with you. Now think about it. When you're bad enough, it warrants a one-on-one conversation.
Sounds like an episode of that. God, what is that? They all sit around. They said Spencer are all really concerned.
Intervention.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, right. But then what's worse then? So you have that intervention every week. But then what's worse is after the intervention, they all individually want to have a conversation with you, and it's pack mentality, and that's what helps you stay accountable.
Yeah.
And so like whether your goal is to find clarity, to be good at solving problems, to solve a specific problem, a life transformation, a huge shift from like, okay, I've got this job and now I'm going into a completely different market. It's basically a group of people that hold you accountable to the act of mastering the human problem solving game, right?
Yeah.
And it is the, how do I put this? The internet's so useful when you use this type of learning with that type of knowledge, this type of wisdom with that type of knowledge. It's crazy, and that's
by
the whole
wisdom
point.
you mean the insight that you get both from yourself and the parent-child relationship you create, along with the inquisitive questioning and accountability that you get from like your peer group.
Yeah.
That's where you get wisdom from, and then from there you get to ask you learn how to ask the right questions,
right?
To which you can go out into the world and ask Google,
right? And so here's how those are pings of each other. They're polarizing versions of each other. To attain knowledge is to be able to find answers from the outside and bring them in. That's knowledge, okay? Wisdom is the ability to find truth from within and bring it out. Bring it out in the form of your emotions, your words, your intentions, your actions, your decisions, and your belief system. And when you have that as a left lever and a right lever to steer through that wave of the universe of the known and the unknown, that in that ride of curiosity, that's how you balance those two things out, is knowledge and wisdom. We've become so masculine, which is the knowledge side,
right?
That
it's structuring, it's organizing,
and again,
it's linearity,
right? And it's success based,
yeah.
Where it's like I want to be the best at a thing, whereas wisdom is what are the core principles so I can be great at everything.
It's the more of the why than the what or the how.
Exactly. And that is what...
And that's a wisdom in a lot of ways is feminine.
Yes.
I think because it opens itself up to a lot of possibilities, whereas the masculine is tunnel vision.
Right.
Right. We are so focused on this one fucking thing, and we're gonna get it, and here's how we're gonna do it, and it's very linear, and this is the thing. But wisdom opens it up. It opens it up to irrationality. It opens it up to emotion and play.
Yep.
And innovation, which is these are all different facets of the feminine.
Right. And the secret to life is writing a story that's exciting, that's compelling, that was worthwhile for you, that had an overall positive effect on others, and one that gives insight to wisdom, great problem solving, and a myriad of experience. That's what life is about, and doing that in a way that, and on its highest level, doing that in a way that serves others in a massive way. That's the top level of it, right? And that is through balancing out your contradictions. realizing that there is no such thing as bests. There is extreme versions of one, and in order to have everything, you have to be equally as proficient at its polarized version of itself. You have to learn how to master being good and kind and empathetic and driven and imaginative. And on the other side, you have to master your monsters. You have to know when to let them show. You have to know how to, at some points, it's appropriate for you to just utilize anger. Yeah, to utilize anger and aggression and forcefulness. Assertiveness. Forcefulness might be a little strong.
A little forceful.
Yeah, right. So aggressiveness, assertiveness gone too far is forcefulness.
Sure.
And then make sure that you don't cross the line on that side. And not only that, you've got to balance out that attribute, because then life comes at you and you take everything in and you realize that you have your right side and your left side to be able to navigate and navigate yourself through whatever life situations you get yourself into.
Yeah. So let me ask you, it's like seems like you're kind of putting a little ribbon, a nice little pretty bow on this conversation when you said the ultimate end game is really to contribute to others,
right? And
to write a nice story. I think your words were the point of life, the purpose of life is to write a compelling story, and that is based on using your talent, your wisdom, in the service of the greater good, others, society, even if it's just your family, the people who live within your four walls, right? Would you say that another way of putting that is looking beyond yourself? How much of fulfillment in the way you see it and making that transition from like self-centered fulfillment or self-centered success rather to what you call fulfillment, how much of that leans on others and giving outside of yourself beyond just hoarding success for yourself?
It's the second part to it.
The second part of the story of your life.
Right. So like what happens is you go out and you chase success and you're serving yourself essentially. You're serving your own self-interest and you're kind of sacrificing everything else. Tunnel vision on becoming that thing. And then you start to realize, oh shit, I need to service everything and not just this one thing. No. Okay? And
you see a lot of like people who are in that aspect of their lives, of the success part. And I'll be honest, I'm here, right? I'm in this point right now. I've got a lot of friends, mostly male, who are in the same thing, where they have let intimate relationships, friendships, relationships with their family kind of go to the wayside a little bit, to varying degrees, all in service of like, this is. Right. I'm focused on this one fucking thing, my job, my money, my company, whatever. And so that's the kind of collateral damage that happens with success, oftentimes, not all the time, but is, you forget about the other. Right.
And so you spend your life trying to be able to focus this thing on getting that thing that you wanted. And again, that might be a job. When I was younger, it was the perfect body. I was doing bodybuilding and fitness modeling at the expense of everything else, at the expense of my income, at the expense of my vacations, my experiences, everything. Again, it might be with families. You start a family when you're 20, and that was the thing that you served. And then you realize, oh my gosh, there are other things outside of this one thing that I need to develop.
Social friendships. I haven't developed my
career.
Exactly.
So what people tend to do is they're like, well, whether it was building a family or chasing the career, they realize I haven't been very social, and so they just start going out, and because
that's where you pick up severe drinking habits and drug addiction.
Exactly, but here's the thing: that's what you should be doing. Or they start saying, I'm going to donate my time to charity, and they do that, but eventually there's still something missing, because the pathway isn't do this, and then serve everything else. The role is do this, internalize, and allow that energy to organize itself through self-awareness and mindfulness, and create a 4D toroidal field, and then it goes out everywhere. Not just like this, but in 4 dimensions it goes out.
Yeah.
So people miss that part where you have to look internally first. That's why the very first thing that I have anyone do, the very first thing that I do when I'm feeling stuck is a personal inventory. I'm like...
What do you mean by personal inventory?
I take a look at... If I'm doing like a broad one, like you do maybe on New Year's or something, you take a look at every area of your life and you give it a rating grade. You know, how do I feel about my spiritual life, my health, my eating habits, my family, my romantic relationships, all the basic stuff, my money, all of that. And then anything...
What needs help?
Right. Or I don't ask what needs help. I say, how do I feel about it? Now, sometimes it's like, this is the best area of my life, and I don't want anything to change.
Killing it.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right. Okay, so we don't need to get a tutor for that, right? And then...
Like, even when you're talking about an imaginary successful part of your life, you get that shit-eating smirk on your face. If you, ever actually get to know this guy... He's got like the cheesiest, most shit-eating smirk ever. It's just pure self-satisfaction. It's a thing of beauty to watch him just like feel so proud about himself. I love that because I do the same thing.
Okay,
but it's not busting your balls here.
No, I get it. So then you look at some things. It's like, well, I'm satisfied, but I could use some improvement. Yeah. Then there are things that's like I really struggle in this area. And then there are areas where it's like, this is so bad it's affecting the other areas in my life. Right. I've had eating
toxic.
Yeah, I've had relationships like that where it's like it's starting to affect my work, starting to affect my sleep. Yeah. I've had eating habits that way, where it's like it's starting to affect my self-confidence, which is affecting my ability to serve others, which is and it just cascades. I mean, basically every area in life I've experienced where it's affected.
Sure.
That, and so once I find that problem, it's like kind of giving yourself a full body massage, seeing where the knots are. That's what a personal inventory is. And then once you find it, it's like, well, sometimes you'll just work the knot out, like you'll just ask yourself a bunch of questions and you'll journal a bunch, and that's helpful. But it's even more helpful to know points of insertion and points of origin and how muscles connect. So then the strategy applied can be more efficient, more safe, more effective, more...
Yeah, maybe the reason you've got a knot in your back is because you're not drinking enough water.
Exactly.
You don't need a massage.
Exactly.
You're just dehydrated.
And the human experience is so it's emotional, it's metaphysical, it's physical.
Highly connected between a lot of different...
All the way down to
points.
Cellular, man.
Yeah.
And they're all connected. So you kind of have to do a full body massage and a full MRI scan and use a bunch of different modalities to kind of examine it.
Yeah.
And that's what a good mirror is, a good friend, a good mentor is someone to bounce these things off. Okay, I have this issue, and kind of bounce it off them, and where you feel that pain, that confusion, that discomfort, fear, whatever it is. Then you go into your precise language. You start speaking only of what exists, and you fractal things down where you feel these negative emotions or confusion, and you come up with a game plan. After that, it's an integrity game. I know what the problem is. I know what behaviors I gravitate towards when I struggle this way, because we all have that out. Whether it's an episode of your favorite TV show, whether it's the snacks that you...
My favorite thing to do is actually both of those, which is I lay on my bed, and then I take my laptop. Some of you people out in internet land may know this one, and then you lay on your bed and you take your laptop and you balance it on your belly. And then you put on... For me right now, I'm watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yeah. Because, I mean, what's funnier than, like, 5 sociopaths, 4 sociopaths, whatever it is, and then like eating chips and drinking Dr. Pepper. 100%, that's my out.
Yeah.
And God damn it, it's a great out. I love it.
There have been
I'm trying to do it less, but man, I'm telling you, it's a good one.
Oh, there are some days where you spend your whole day doing it. You just binge, and it's laying down and eating is like.
Yeah, it's two things. Like, if you could just if you can incorporate sex and TV in that, forget it.
Game over.
Yeah, the day is done.
And so when you can identify what behaviors you go towards, at least when you're in that behavior, you're like, I'm avoiding whatever it is, that thing that I want. And then you ask yourself the question, like, what action steps can I take that indefinitely prove that I'm moving forward towards my goal? Yeah. I give the example of, like, I want to write a novel. Okay. Mm-hmm. What can you do? You can put your clock on 20 minutes and just type. Yeah. Whenever it comes, just keep your fingers moving for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. No matter what comes of it, no matter if you throw that away, you are still one step closer to writing that novel, because content creation is 90% throwing your shit away. It's basically what it is.
Editing.
Right.
Hemingway, my man, Ernest Hemingway, was like, write drunk.
Right.
Edit sober.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I never heard that before.
Yeah. And that man could drink.
Yeah.
He could drink.
So that's the and again, think about that allow the irrational, and then in editing, be precise.
Yeah, that I didn't think about that. I've always loved that quote. I mean,
yeah.
Hemingway's a Chicago boy. We're both Chicago boys. Like, I love his writing, but that quote, write drunk, edit sober, really is the it's all coming together. It really is like the quote that puts together this entire question of, when do you be irrational and imprecise?
Right.
And then how do you make that transition into parenting yourself, moving forward in a masculine way, moving forward in a structured way that's like focused on achievement and getting shit done.
Right.
Write drunk and edit sober.
Yeah.
Like, inspire yourself drunk.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily literally drunk, and then execute, edit it, form it together in a way that is cold, calculated, and sober.
Sorry, the mic is the tapping. And that goes to show that female energy comes first.
Yeah.
It should.
Just like in all life.
Right, exactly. And that's the problem that our society has come to, is that we think that male energy is dominant, or it precedes feminine energy, and the creation process is more feminine. It's open, it's emotional, it's feeling first, a little bit messy, and then then you go into a masculine, more objective, more focused, more accomplishing, to package it up and move it through time, and going through that cycle of feminine energy of irrational and open and creative and allowance and all of the the endless catalog of the universe, through expressing emotion, and then filtering it through precise language, constant intention of progress and achievement, and you keep riding that wave. That's how you're always making progress, and that's what fulfillment is. I talk about the difference between happiness and fulfillment, and Jordan Peterson says happiness isn't when you get the thing. That's satiation. That's satisfaction, and satisfaction is temporary. It's having an appetite is the pain. The cooking of the food is the journey.
Going grocery shopping for me.
Right, and eating journey. It is the satisfaction. Once you eat it, you have another appetite coming. But what was fulfilling was not that you desired to have calories run through your bloodstream, and now you have calories running through your bloodstream. It was the process of intention and creativity of, how am I going to satiate this desire, and doing it how you decided to do it, going to the grocery store, picking the foods, deciding how to prepare it, how to cook it, how to season it, how long to keep it on there. And it's funny that a meal takes 5 minutes to eat, but it might take all day to prepare.
Yeah. Cooking for me is a big part of my life. It's something I'm hugely passionate about. It's probably my biggest passion is cooking, and cooking for other people, and having a lot of people over. It's a great way to bring people together. Food is, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so this metaphor is very ripe with possibility for me, because I sit here and whenever we all get together, you, me, and our buddies get together and have a big meal, like, I'm usually the one cooking pretty much all of it.
Right.
And this is something that, like, even though, again, the meal might take all of a half hour to sit down and eat, a lot of times when I don't know if I've told you this, a lot of times when I sit down and actually eat it, I give less of a shit about that than I do preparing the meal, because I've probably thought about this for days prior.
Right.
When we decide, hey, a week earlier, Sunday, we're all getting together for dinner, I'm thinking about this. I'm making shopping lists. I'm putting it all together in my head in the act of preparing things, which is, in your words, like the journey.
Right.
Like, we're working towards this thing.
Right.
Is the most fulfilling thing. I love making Thanksgiving dinner. I hate eating Thanksgiving.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And even if you're to tell the story to someone in a way that grips them, you can say that I made a steak. Okay? And that affects your imagination a certain way. But if you say that I visited an Amish farm and got to make friends with the cows, and I chose the right cow that I wanted to make this steak out of, and he ate nothing but grass and received massage just like the Colby beef, you know?
You know what else
feed him beer.
You know, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And the 80-year-old butcher is the one who sliced the meat from
comes from a line of butchers.
Right, yeah.
All the men
10th generation butcher. And this cast iron pan that was passed down from generations.
Grandmothers had it, yeah.
And her grandmother had it, and her grandmother had it. And using the butter from
same fucking cow. Well, not the same. Yeah.
No, from the mother of that bull's calf, whatever. And you're telling this story, and then how you marinated it for 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever, this painstaking process. And when you cut into the steak, it gives it significance. And when you cut into that steak and you see that it's just perfectly charred and it's perfectly red in the middle, and you're eating it out of the respect for the life that the bull had, and you're tasting all the flavors that the salt mixed with the char and the butter that just are a glaze on top of the steak, that when you bite into it, it is the perfect amount of like chew and dissolve in your mouth.
It's transcendent.
Yeah. So right now, my mouth's watering at least, and it's because I've activated my imagination. When the point of the story is I ate some steak. One part is romantic and intriguing and saying
story,
right, and saying more than you need to. And a lot of guys have complaints with women. It's like, just get to the point. Yeah. Just say what you're just trying to say. No, you're missing the beauty of it, and that is what life is. And success is I got the steak. It's a very primal attribute of humans of I achieved, yes, I win, alpha. And then there's the story of how did you do it, and that in appreciating that journey is what an ascended human is.
The narrative gives it meaning,
right? Because cavemen back in the day don't care how you cooked it over the fire. It's did we eat?
Are we not dead yet?
Right.
Good.
And that's right. And that is but now that we've ascended, it's no longer about the thing. It's the experience. And you're seeing that in culture a lot, especially in the past 10 years, where people are valuing experiences, enlightenment, growth, deeper meaning, more so than... remember when Hummers were cool? You know what I mean? Hummers and mansions, and now it's smart. Now it's smart cars, electric vehicles,
and then they've got that whole show about people who live in like really tiny houses.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like their house is as big as this room we're sitting in.
Right. Minimalism has become the new consumerism. And that's where everybody's heading. So, this is kind of how precise language is used to keep this process,
the creative process,
right?
Because that's really what it is. Because it's like part of it is the feminine, messy part,
right?
But creativity is shit without action,
right?
And so it's you're talking about how do we navigate and how do we negotiate between those two fundamental parts of the creative process,
right? And once you achieve success, you've mastered that masculine side. You start getting a desire to do more. And that desire to do more is a positive emotion, and emotion in general is feminine. But we're like, we try to find things, but nothing's satisfying. Yeah. And then you go into pain, and pain either needs to be polarized with precise language, or you go numb. You just choose to ignore it. Yeah. And that is the more dangerous side of it. But ultimately, fulfillment is about how descriptively and captivating can you tell the story of I had a steak. Because that's what human life is. Yeah. What happened? I was born, then I died. Okay, that's the precise. That is the most precise way and precise and concise way to put life. I was born, and then I died. What fills in the gap? That's the story. That's the story, and that's the whole thing's about, man.
Like I said at the outset, we talk precise language all the time. I've done a number of sessions with you, so I've got a good command of it. But this distinction, and I literally use it every day. I think of this, at least I use the distinctions every day.
Oh, yeah, right.
In my job, I use it on the weekends when I'm working on my personal projects. But the one distinction I ever came upon was how do you negotiate preciseness, which is essentially the back half of the creation process.
Right, yeah, right.
With the front part, which is, you know, we're giving birth to something right now,
right?
And it's a little messy. Like, how do you negotiate that? And that's a messy process. The creative process is a messy process, but like I think that you've done a really clear job, like for me at least, and I think for everybody else watching, of negotiating that and melding these two seemingly contradictory and in kind of two processes that are at odds: the masculine and the feminine, the messy and the creative versus the orderly and achievement focused, with a single tool, right? Mm-hmm. Of taking the message, taking the learnings, taking the inspiration from the creativity, and using that as fuel to move forward with whatever the fuck it is that matters to you.
Taking that energy and putting it into a series of modality that ends up being the thing that you want it most. That's what alchemy is. Yeah. The ability to turn chaos into order with one's intent and actions. And that's what it's all about, man. That's what the invincible training, my courses, the coaching, that's what we do all day. I mean, that's our friendships.
Well, that's my relationship with you. That's our friendship.
Is just creating cool shit with awesome people and having the thing that the internet can't do, which is look at you from a different perspective and ask you new questions. You know. Yeah. So, all right, dope. Any wine left? Cheers, brother.
Cheers.